What's up guys, this is Saiyan here, coming at you with another how to play video, and we're looking at C23, Jim Lee's C23. So for the Eagle Eye viewers, you may have noticed that just up there on that shelf, I've had four C23 starter decks, and I kept it just in like the back pocket to sort of eventually look at it and explain it, how it goes, what it looks like. And it is basically mini Magic the Gathering. It's a very simplified version of Magic the Gathering. It actually came out in 1998, and it only seen the one release, the one expansion, the one set, however you want to call that. About 168 cards that we have as a card pool to work with. So it's literally down my alleyway. So if we take a look at the cards, take a look at what is on the palette, and take a look at the basic rules, is what going to be our objective for today. So follow me. Okay, so first and foremost, we have actually 6 starter decks that you get for the game. This is one example. Steamroller, Gung Ho is another example. You can find these relatively cheap. Is it a good starting point? Sure, but if you can get boosters or you can get a bigger collection, that's probably the easiest way to start to tinker with this particular game. Now, it's based on a comic book series created predominantly by Jim Lee, hence why the name. And it was released by Image Comics in the late 1990s. So you will see, if you like kind of the art of Spawn from that era, then this is definitely something to dig into a little bit. So when I say it's mini Magic the Gathering, well, actually it was developed and released by Wizards of the Coast, and Richard Garfield was involved in the creation of this game. And it's not just C23 that you can play in this system. The Arc system is what this is called, the Arc system. There's also Hercules and Xena that you can also play. So you can play those cards against each other. Obviously, in the late 1990s, Hercules and Xena series was a massive hit on the television. So yeah, if you're more geared towards that, then you can still follow this video, follow these rules, but play with those cards. So we got 3 colors in the game. We have blue, green, and we have, if I find it, red. So already moving away from the 5-color pie of Magic the Gathering, it's a lot more simplified. We only have 3 colors. But we still have the land mechanics. 1998, that's when obviously Magic was about, well, technically about 5 years old. They still kept these basic mechanics where you play a resource per turn and you tap your cards. That's how actually it's referred to in this game. Obviously, they patented the word tap on tap. But yeah, that's basically what you do, and there's a lot less restrictions to what we see in Magic the Gathering. So we got 3 colors, and we also have not only 3 colors, but besides the resources, we have 3 types of cards. We have combat cards, which can only be played during combat. We have action cards, which can be predominantly played when it's our main phase, but they can also be used in our opponent's main phase, which makes them really cool. And of course, we have to have characters naturally. So basically, when we look at the basic mechanics of the game, what it looks like is you play a land a turn. You can play characters. When you play the character, they come into play on tap. They can immediately attack, or you can keep them up and block with. And basically, rather than having an attack and a defense value, we just have the power of the card. Cost is always up there, as you can see. Same for the action, same for the combats. We always find the card cost here in the upper left corner, and or right for you guys maybe, and that's the basics of the game. It's very simple. So what happens is deck construction. We're looking at 40 card decks. That's the basic 40 card deck. As usual, late 90s card game style. If you and your opponent agree to change the size of the deck, it's okay as long as you both agree on that. And the basic mechanics say 40 card deck is the minimum basically, and 4 copies per card maximum, except resources. Resources you can have as many as you want. Now, this basically leads to these starter decks, basically half of them being resources. You get like 18 resources and you get 22 actually playable cards, which maybe doesn't seem too great, but also this game is geared towards a very quick gameplay. And basically what that means is every time there's an attack that gets through, that basically mills from the top of your opponent's deck. So this, for example, is a power discarded. This character has a power of 2. If it's not blocked, you mill 2 cards from your opponent's deck. And that's the win condition. Whoever runs out of cards first loses the game. Very simple. So how do we play a card? Well, let's actually look at the build of these cards. So there's a few things we can see. Obviously, the action cards, the combat cards, they look very similar. The main way to tell them apart is to look at whether it says action or combat, and action has a slightly different color than the combat cards. But besides that, they both have a text box, an effect box, and that's about it. Obviously some flavor text there as well. Whereas the characters, they also have a power level, a power value, whatever you want to call it. Now, because we can play only one resource a turn, unless the card says differently, we will be looking at, okay, so first turn, we both start with 7 cards in our hands. I'm going to talk about it a little bit more. I can play a resource, and then if I can play something, I can tap the resource, I can keep it untapped, pass, if there's nothing else I can do. Now, how the cards actually come into play, and from the basic starter boxes, you get normally a 2 color deck variant. So Steamroller, for example, comes in blue and green, and the Gung-Ho deck comes in blue and red colors. And basically, it doesn't matter what really the cost of the card is. You will have to tap that many resources. But for actual specific colors, you only need to have at least one of that color that you tap for that particular card. So let's say I have 4 resources in play, and I want to play the Councillor Mariah's Guard. I must be able to tap at least 1 blue resource, and the rest doesn't matter. And that's basically how cards come into play. As usual, Magic the Gathering style, at the beginning of the turn, we untap all our cards, then we draw a card from our deck, and then we basically go into our main phase where we can play characters, we can play actions if we want to, and then we can decide whether we want to attack. If we want to attack, we have to have obviously untapped creatures, characters to be able to attack with, and our opponent can block if they have any untapped characters in play, and they can also play action cards, and you can play combat cards specifically in combat. Okay, so with that in mind, obviously just looking at an extremely simple version of Magic the Gathering, let's also note the one specific factor about this game. Basically, some cards have a little circle in there which either has a G or an E in there, and that means good or evil. Now, there's no specifications for these cards. There's no restrictions if you play with the traditional rules. But there is an encouragement that you could try and build a deck with only evil or good cards in that deck. But there's no specifications really in there, just a bit of an extra flavor for those who want to bring a bit more spice into their deck building. But it's really simple, besides the fact that you of course can resource flood, usual Magic the Gathering style. So if we then basically bring back to the beginning of the game, both players start with 7 cards in their hand, and you're allowed to mulligan if you have 2 or less resources in your hand, as long as you want, technically, because the rules don't specify anything else besides that. So, if you don't like your hand, you have 2 or less resources, you can show that hand to your opponent. Your opponent verifies whether you have only 2 or less resources, and you can draw, shuffle those 7 cards back and draw a new 7-card opening hand. And yeah, technically, you can keep doing this until you have at least 3 resources. Once you hit a hand which has at least 3 resources, then that's about it. Now, this can lead to some problems, and again, there's nothing stopping you from having some house rules. Of course, to say that, well, if I have more than 5, or if I have 5 or more resources in my hand, I can also reshuffle. It's down to you guys, but basically, the basic rules that come in the starters say if you have less than two or lesser amount of resources in your hand, you can basically mulligan. And from that point of view, it's pretty much whoever decks out the opponent first. Now with this setup, it makes sense for these starter decks to be dual colored. There's obviously a lot of experimentation that can be done with looking at monocolored decks, triple colored decks as well, and you can bring in some elements with the good versus evil cards. What do you allow to be included in the decks? With 100 less than 170 cards, there isn't a huge amount of playing field, obviously, but there is enough there to entertain a couple of people who want to just enjoy this game. The artwork is amazing. I mean, the artwork is all comic book style. Those of you who watch my channel know that I absolutely adore comic book style card games, particularly this late 90s sort of style. Um, this was like the renaissance of comic books, in my opinion, at least. With Image Comics starting up and bringing in a lot of creativity and a lot of looseness in their comic design, storytelling, everything that comes with that. Really vibrant colors, very new style that was brought in back then. But anyway, the the flavor of the game comes from basically 2 factions, really. We have the humans who live underground on the earth, and we have the intruders who are called the Angelans, and the Angelans rule the surface. And interestingly, they seem to be more of the good guys here, controversially, compared to the humans. We do have, some main characters in the game, and we do have some characters that have the let's see, find one, the unique keyword there. Obviously, that just means that you can only have one of this character in play. Nemesis is an evil card, as you can see. 6 cost, 5 power, unique, and it does a bunch. She does a bunch of good stuff. If this character attacks, your opponent can't play combat cards for that turn, and you may choose one of his or her characters. That character can't block this one for that turn. So what's really cool about this game is that because it uses this very basic vocabulary that Magic the Gathering introduced into the card games, and this is already a revised iteration of that. Again, as I said, this game is 98. Magic by then has done a lot of rephrasing, a lot of work on their keywords and stuff like that. It does inherit a lot of that. So it makes the cards very straightforward to read. None of this old BS where the cards are like... It's straight to the point. It tells you what you can do, what it does, and there's no real debate about it. It's very easy to understand. Very easy also to potentially use these cards and create your own rule set. But that's for a different video, of course. So basically, in a nutshell, this is C23, Jim Lee's C23 collective trading card game. If you guys have more interest, I'm more than happy to make more videos of this game. talk to you about maybe some combos, maybe some specific cards. Let me know what you would like to see, and I'll bring it to you. But up until next time, Boss Saiyan signing out. Peace.